The snow fell in whispers that night, soft and relentless, covering the world in a blanket that muffled even the sound of my breaking heart. I could taste copper in my mouth, feel the warmth of my own blood seeping through my torn clothes, staining the pristine white beneath me in patterns that looked almost beautiful, like scattered rose petals at a wedding I would never have. The pack gathering had been mandatory. Everyone knew what it meant when the Alpha called us all to the clearing during the full moon in winter. Mate bonds were sacred, meant to be celebrated, announced with pride under the watchful eyes of the moon goddess herself. I had dressed carefully that morning, my pale blonde hair braided with trembling fingers, hoping against hope that perhaps tonight would be different, that perhaps Daniel would finally look at me the way I'd dreamed of since the bond snapped into place 6 months ago. I was wrong. I, Daniel Thorne, reject you, Emma Whitfield, as my mate and future Luna. The words had ripped through me like claws, severing something fundamental inside my chest. I'd felt it, the golden thread that had connected us unraveling, burning away until there was nothing left but ash and agony. The pack had gasped, whispers rippling through the crowd like wind through dead leaves. Rejections were rare, considered cruel, a violation of the moon's will. But Daniel stood there, his jaw set, his dark eyes fixed somewhere over my shoulder, as if I were too insignificant to even look at while he destroyed me. "You're too weak," he'd said, his voice carrying across the frozen clearing. "Too soft. Too human. I need a Luna who can stand beside me, not someone I'll constantly have to protect." The shame had been worse than the pain. Every eye in the pack had been on me, some pitying, others relieved it wasn't them, a few openly gleeful at my humiliation. Sarah, with her flame-red hair and warrior's build, had smiled. She'd always wanted Daniel, had always looked at me like I was an obstacle she couldn't wait to remove. I hadn't stayed to hear the rest, couldn't. My legs had moved of their own accord, carrying me away from the clearing, away from the pack, away from everything I'd known. The forest had swallowed me whole, branches catching at my clothes, roots trying to trip me. I'd run until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out, until I collapsed in a part of the territory I didn't recognize. That's when they'd found me. Rogues. 3 of them, their eyes wild with madness and hunger. Wolves without packs were dangerous, unpredictable, their humanity slowly eroding until only the beast remained. They'd circled me like vultures, and I'd known with perfect clarity that I was going to die here, alone in the snow, rejected and unmourned. I'd fought. Despite everything, I'd fought. My wolf was small, blonde-furred and delicate, nothing like the powerful warriors in my pack. But she'd tried. We'd tried. It hadn't been enough. Now I lay crumpled in the snow, my body broken, my blood painting abstract art across the frozen ground. The cold was seeping into my bones, making everything feel distant and soft. Maybe this was better. Maybe dying here, where no one would find me, was mercy. At least I wouldn't have to see the pity in their eyes. Wouldn't have to watch Daniel choose Sarah. Wouldn't have to live with the knowledge that I was fundamentally unworthy. My mother's voice echoed in my memory, soft and warm like summer honey. "Kindness is not weakness, Emma. Compassion is not defeat. Remember that when the world tells you otherwise." She died when I was 12, taken by a sickness that even our shifter healing couldn't fight. My father had followed her within a year, his heart simply giving up without his mate. I'd been raised by the pack, passed between families like an unwanted burden, always too quiet, too gentle, too breakable for a world that valued strength above all else. The darkness was pulling at me now, soft and inviting. I could feel my heartbeat slowing, each pulse weaker than the last. My eyes were heavy, the snow that had been falling in my face now settling gently, beginning to cover me like a burial shroud. Then I felt it. Heat. Warmth pressing against my shattered body, wrapping around me like a living blanket. My eyes struggled to open, crusted with ice and blood. Through the blur, I saw black. Not the darkness of death, but fur. Midnight black fur that seemed to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. A wolf. The largest wolf I'd ever seen. He was massive, easily twice the size of any alpha I'd encountered. His fur was pure black, no variation in color, as dark as the space between stars. He'd curled his enormous body around mine, sheltering me from the wind and snow, sharing his heat with practiced care. His head rested near mine, and I could feel his breath against my frozen cheek, warm and steady and impossibly gentle for such a powerful creature. I should have been terrified. This wolf was clearly not from my pack, and his size suggested power that dwarfed even Daniel's alpha dominance. But I felt no fear, only confusion and a strange, desperate gratitude. "Please," I whispered, my voice barely audible even to my own ears. "Let me go, let me die." The wolf's body tensed. Then, slowly, deliberately, he lifted his massive head and looked directly into my eyes. His eyes were gold. Not the amber gold of most shifters, but pure molten gold. Like coins in sunlight. Like treasure in darkness. They were ancient and knowing and held such intensity that I forgot to breathe. He held my gaze for a long moment, and I felt something pass between us, not a mate bond, but something else. Recognition, perhaps. Understanding. Then he did something that made my heart stutter in my chest. He licked my face. One long, gentle stroke of his tongue across my frozen cheek, cleaning away the blood and ice with surprising tenderness. Then he pressed his nose against my temple and made a low, rumbling sound deep in his chest. Not a growl. A purr, almost, if wolves could purr. "No," he seemed to say with that gesture. "Not happening. Not tonight." He adjusted his position, pulling me even closer against the furnace of his body, tucking my smaller frame completely within the protective curl of his massive form. His tail swept around to cover my legs, his head positioned so that his breath would continue to warm my face. He was keeping me alive through sheer will and body heat, refusing to let the cold claim me. "Why?" I managed to ask, even though speech cost me dearly. "You don't even know me." And those gold eyes fixed on me again, and I saw something in them that made my breath catch. Pain. Loneliness. Understanding. This wolf, this creature of obvious power and dominance, knew what it meant to suffer, knew what it meant to be rejected, to be unwanted, to lie bleeding in the snow while the world moved on without you. He knew, and he refused to let me face it alone. The warmth of his body was working, slowly coaxing life back into my frozen limbs. I could feel my wolf stirring inside me, weak but responsive, drawn to the strength radiating from this mysterious stranger. My wounds were still grave, the rogues had done serious damage, but shifter healing was beginning to knit tissue back together, cell by cell, slow but steady. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Who are you?" The massive wolf simply watched me, his gold eyes never wavering, his body a fortress against the cold and dark. Snow continued to fall, building up on his black fur, but he didn't move, didn't shift his position. He was a mountain, unmovable, committed to this vigil over a broken stranger he had no reason to save. And in that moment, as the pain began to ebb and warmth slowly returned to my limbs, I realized something profound. Daniel had rejected me for being too weak, too soft, too compassionate. But this wolf, this powerful, mysterious creature, had seen me dying in the snow and had chosen to save me. Not because I was strong, not because I could offer him anything, but simply because I needed help. Perhaps, I thought as my eyes grew heavy with exhaustion rather than death, perhaps Daniel had been wrong. Perhaps there was a different kind of strength, one that didn't announce itself with dominance and aggression. Perhaps compassion recognized compassion, even in the dark. The last thing I felt before sleep claimed me was the steady, strong beat of the black wolf's heart against my back, a rhythm that promised I would wake again. I would live to see another dawn, and nothing would ever be the same. I woke to birdsong and the scent of pine. For a disorienting moment, I didn't remember where I was or why every muscle in my body screamed in protest when I tried to move. Then, it all came rushing back. Daniel's rejection, the rogues, the snow, the dying, and the wolf. My eyes snapped open. Morning light filtered through a canopy of evergreens, painting everything in shades of gold and green. I was no longer lying in the snow. Instead, I found myself on a bed of carefully arranged pine boughs, covered with what looked like a massive fur pelt that smelled of forest and something wild and clean. The black wolf was gone. Panic fluttered in my chest, irrational but intense. He'd saved me, kept me alive through the night, and now he'd simply vanished. I pushed myself up on trembling arms, gasping at the sharp pain that lanced through my ribs. My clothes were still torn and blood-stained, but beneath them, I could feel the telltale tightness of healing wounds. My wolf had worked overtime during the night, mending what the rogues had broken. "You're awake." The voice came from behind me, deep and rough as gravel, but somehow not unkind. I turned too quickly, my vision swimming with the movement, and found myself staring at a man. He stood in the shadows of the trees, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing simple dark clothes that looked well-worn. His hair was black as midnight, falling past his shoulders in waves that caught the morning light. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Gold. That same impossible molten gold I'd seen in the wolf's gaze. Him. The wolf was him. "I moved you," he said, gesturing to the makeshift bed. "You needed better shelter. There's a stream 20 yards east if you're thirsty." His voice carried an accent I couldn't quite place, something old-world and formal despite the rough edges. He didn't move closer, maintaining a careful distance that I appreciated, even as part of me wanted to close the gap, to thank him properly for what he'd done. "You saved my life," I said, my voice hoarse and damaged. "Why?" Something flickered across his face. Too quick to read fully, but it looked almost like surprise. "You needed help. That's not usually reason enough in our world." His lips quirked, almost but not quite a smile. "No, I suppose it isn't." We stood in silence for a moment, studying each other. He was beautiful in a harsh, dangerous way, all sharp angles and contained power, like a blade kept carefully sheathed. There were scars on his hands, visible even from this distance, and more disappearing beneath the collar of his shirt. This was a man who'd known violence intimately. "I'm Emma," I offered finally. "Emma Whitfield, from the Silver Pine Pack." His expression shuddered immediately, walls slamming down behind those gold eyes. "I know what pack you're from. Your scent carries their mark." The way he said it made something cold settle in my stomach. Not disgust, exactly, but distance. Deliberate separation. "And you are?" I pressed, despite the warning bells in my head. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Nathaniel Cross. I have no pack." A lone wolf. The realization should have frightened me. Wolves without packs were dangerous, unstable, prone to losing their humanity. But this man, this Nathaniel, stood before me with perfect control, his wolf clearly present but perfectly leashed. There was nothing mad or feral about him, only a deep, bone-deep weariness that I recognized because I'd seen it in my own reflection. "Thank you," I said softly, "for not letting me die." His jaw tightened. "The rogues have been dealt with. They won't hurt anyone else." The casual way he said it, the certainty in his voice, told me everything I needed to know. 3 rogues that had nearly killed me, and he'd eliminated them as if they were nothing more than nuisances. The power that suggested made my wolf press closer to my consciousness, not in fear, but in instinctive response to such overwhelming strength. "You should return to your pack," Nathaniel said, and I heard the dismissal in his tone. "They'll be searching for you." "No," I said, the word escaping before I could think better of it. "They won't." His eyes sharpened on me, really seeing me for the first time. Taking in my too thin frame, the haunted look I couldn't hide, the way I held myself like something broken that had been badly glued back together. "What happened?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost gentle. I didn't want to tell him, didn't want to voice it aloud and make it real all over again. But something about this stranger who'd saved me without question, who'd curled his massive body around mine and refused to let me slip away into darkness, made me feel safe enough to speak the truth. "My mate rejected me, last night, in front of the entire pack." The words tasted like ash. He said I was too weak to be his Luna, too soft, too human. Nathaniel's entire body went rigid, his hands curling into fists at his sides. When he spoke, his voice carried an edge that made my wolf whimper in submission. And then what happened? I ran. I couldn't stay there. Couldn't face them all staring at me. I ran into the forest and the rogues found me. I laughed, but it came out broken. Fitting, really. Too weak to be a Luna, too pathetic to even die properly. Stop. The command in his voice made me flinch. But when I looked at him, I didn't see anger directed at me. His gold eyes blazed with fury, but it was focused inward, at something I couldn't see. Rejection is not a reflection of your worth, he said, each word careful and deliberate. It's a failure of the one who rejected you to see what stands before them. The conviction in his voice stole my breath. This stranger, this lone wolf who owed me nothing, spoke with such certainty that for a moment I almost believed him. You don't know me, I whispered. I know you fought 3 rogues despite being half their size. I know you're standing here talking to me when by all rights you should be dead. I know you have a strength that has nothing to do with claws or fangs. He took a single step closer, and I felt the weight of his presence like a physical thing. Your mate was a fool. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I'd cried enough, bled enough, given enough of myself to people who didn't value it. What do I do now? I asked, hating how lost I sounded. Nathaniel studied me for a long moment, something working behind his eyes like he was waging an internal war. Finally, he sighed, and it sounded like surrender. You heal. You rest. And then you decide who you want to be when you're not defined by someone else's rejection. Here? Hope fluttered in my chest, fragile and desperate. I have a cabin, about a mile north. It's not much, but it's warm and safe. He paused, and I saw the vulnerability flash across his face before he locked it away. You can stay until you're strong enough to choose your path. No obligations, no expectations. It was a gift beyond measure, and we both knew it. Lone wolves didn't offer shelter to pack members. It was asking for trouble, inviting complications neither of us needed. But he was offering anyway, and I understood with sudden clarity that this man knew what it meant to have nowhere to go, no one to turn to. He was offering me what he'd once needed, and perhaps never received. Why? I asked again, needing to understand. His smile was sad, broken at the edges, because someone should have done the same for me once. And no one did. The honesty of it, the raw pain beneath those simple words, cracked something open inside my chest. We were strangers, but we recognized each other in a way that went beyond words or explanations. 2 wounded creatures who'd found each other in the dark. I'll stay, I said, if you're sure. I'm sure. He led me through the forest, moving with a grace that spoke of years spent living among the trees. I struggled to keep up, my body still healing, still weak. But I refused to complain. Nathaniel adjusted his pace without comment, staying close enough that I could reach him if I stumbled, but far enough to give me space. The cabin appeared like something from a dream. Tucked into a clearing surrounded by ancient pines, it was small but well built. Smoke rising from the chimney in lazy spirals. Herbs hung drying from the eaves, and I could see a garden plot waiting for spring beneath the snow. It's beautiful, I said honestly. It's isolated, he corrected, but I heard the affection beneath the words. This was his sanctuary, his refuge from whatever had driven him to live alone. Inside, the cabin was sparse but clean. One large room served as living space and kitchen, with a sleeping loft visible above. Everything was made by hand, the furniture, the dishes, even the thick rugs that covered the wooden floor. This was a life built from nothing, sustained by strength and determination. You can have the loft, Nathaniel said, already moving to stoke the fire. I'll sleep down here. I can't take your bed. You can, and you will. His tone left no room for argument. You're injured, and you need proper rest. I wanted to protest, but exhaustion was pulling at me again, the brief walk having drained what little energy I'd recovered. Nathaniel seemed to sense it because he guided me to a chair near the fire and pressed a cup of water into my hands. Drink, then sleep. Everything else can wait. I obeyed, too tired to do otherwise. The water was cold and clean, tasting of minerals and mountain snow. When I finished, Nathaniel helped me up the ladder to the loft, his touch careful, impersonal, respectful of boundaries I hadn't even had to set. The bed was simple but comfortable, covered in thick furs that smelled like him, forest and snow, and something uniquely wild. I collapsed into it with a sigh, my body finally giving in to the demands of healing. "Nathaniel?" I called softly as he started back down the ladder. "Yes?" "Thank you. For everything." He paused, his face half hidden in shadow. "Rest, Emma. You're safe here." And somehow, impossibly, I believed him. I fell asleep to the sound of him moving around below, quiet and careful. And for the first time since the rejection, I didn't dream of Daniel's cold eyes or the pack's pitying stares. I dreamed of gold eyes and black fur, and the feeling of being saved. 3 days passed in a rhythm that felt almost peaceful. I spent most of the first day sleeping, my body demanding rest as it worked to fully heal the damage the rogues had inflicted. When I woke, there was always food waiting, simple but nourishing meals of venison stew, fresh bread, herbal tea that tasted of mint, and something earthy I couldn't identify. Nathaniel moved through the cabin like a shadow, present but unobtrusive, giving me space to breathe and heal without pressure or expectation. He was nothing like the males in my pack. They were loud, aggressive, constantly asserting dominance through posturing and challenges. Nathaniel's power was different, quiet, absolute, requiring no announcement because it simply was. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight, and he never, not once, made me feel like a burden despite the fact that I was exactly that. On the 4th morning, I woke feeling almost whole. My ribs no longer ached with each breath. The deep gashes on my arms and legs had closed to pink scars that would fade with time, and my wolf hummed contentedly beneath my skin, stronger than she'd been in months. The rejection still hurt, a dull, persistent ache in my chest where the bond had been severed, but it no longer felt like it might destroy me. I climbed down from the loft to find Nathaniel at the table, sharpening a hunting knife with methodical precision. He looked up as I approached, those gold eyes assessing. "Better," he observed. "Much better. Thanks to you." I hesitated, then pushed forward. "I should help. Earn my keep. I can cook, clean, gather herbs. You don't owe me anything, Emma. I know, but I want to help. Please." Something shifted in his expression, a softening around the edges that transformed his harsh features into something almost gentle. "There's wood that needs splitting, and the garden plot needs to be cleared of dead growth before spring." Relief flooded through me. Purpose. Something to do besides think about everything I'd lost. "I can do that." He stood, and I was reminded again of how massive he was. Easily 6.5 feet, all muscle and controlled strength. He retrieved a second coat from a peg by the door, one that looked old and worn, and held it out to me. "It'll be cold. And Emma?" He waited until I met his eyes. "Pace yourself. You're healed, not invincible." The concern in his voice made warmth bloom in my chest, unexpected and precious. "Yes, sir." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "Don't call me that. Makes me feel ancient." "How old are you?" I asked, curiosity overcoming caution. Old enough to know better than to answer that question. This time he did smile, just barely, and it transformed his entire face. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of who he might have been before whatever had happened to make him choose solitude over pack life. We worked together in comfortable silence, falling into an easy rhythm. Nathaniel split wood with powerful, precise strokes while I cleared the garden, pulling away dead stalks and preparing the soil for planting. The physical labor felt good, grounding, reminding me that I had a body that worked and hands that could create rather than just receive damage. Around midday, I heard voices. My head snapped up, my wolf immediately alert. 3 figures emerged from the tree line. 2 men and a woman, all moving with the fluid grace of shifters. They stopped when they saw me, surprise evident on their faces. Then their eyes tracked to where Nathaniel had paused mid-swing. "Nathaniel," the woman called out, her voice carrying easy warmth. She was striking, dark skin, close-cropped hair, moving with a warrior's confidence. "Didn't expect to find you with company." "Raven," Nathaniel acknowledged, lowering the axe. His posture had shifted, becoming more guarded, protective. What brings you here?" The woman, Raven, approached slowly, her companions flanking her. They weren't threatening exactly, but I could feel the assessment in their gazes as they studied me. Pack dynamics, even among wolves who claim no pack, were complicated and instinctive. "Heard there was trouble with rogues in the eastern woods," Raven said, her dark eyes moving between Nathaniel and me. "3 of them, all taken down in one night. Figured it was your work. They were dealt with," Nathaniel confirmed, his tone suggesting the topic was closed. But Raven wasn't deterred. She looked at me directly, her expression more curious than hostile. "And you are?" "Emma Whitfield," I said, straightening my spine despite the instinct to make myself smaller. "I was the one the rogues attacked." Understanding dawned in Raven's eyes, followed by something like respect. "And Nathaniel saved you." "He did." One of the men, lean and sharp-featured with copper-colored hair, spoke up. "Whitfield, you're from Silverpine Pack." It wasn't a question. My wolf bristled at his tone, recognizing judgment. "I was." "Was?" The second man, stockier with kind brown eyes, tilted his head. "What happened?" "That's none of your concern, Finn," Nathaniel said sharply, moving to stand closer to me. Not overtly protective, but the message was clear. Emma's business is her own. Raven held up a hand, stopping whatever Finn had been about to say. "Peace. We're not here to interrogate anyone." She turned back to Nathaniel. "We're actually here to invite you to the gathering. It's been too long since you've joined us." "I don't attend gatherings," Nathaniel said flatly. "We know. But this one's important. There are rumors of more rogue activity, coordinated attacks. We need to discuss collective defense." Raven's expression grew serious. "You're the strongest wolf in these territories, Nathaniel. Like it or not, that makes you part of this." I watched Nathaniel's jaw tighten, saw the war playing out behind his eyes. He wanted to refuse, that much was obvious, but he also understood responsibility, understood that his strength meant something whether he wanted it to or not. "Where and when?" he asked finally, resignation in his voice. "Tonight. Old Miller's barn, about 5 miles west." Raven's gaze flicked to me. "You're welcome too, Emma. We're not pack. We're the ones who couldn't or wouldn't fit into traditional structures, but we look out for each other." The invitation surprised me. These wolves didn't know me, didn't owe me anything, yet they were offering acceptance without demands or conditions. It was more than my own pack had given me in years. "I'll think about it," I said carefully. Raven nodded, seeming satisfied. "Good enough." She looked back at Nathaniel. "It's good to see you, old friend. Even if you are as stubborn as ever. Someone has to maintain standards," he replied, and there was warmth beneath the dry tone. These wolves might not be his pack, but they were something. Friends, perhaps, or at least trusted allies. After they left, Nathaniel was quiet. His focus returned to splitting wood with perhaps more force than necessary. I watched him for a while, then set down my garden tools and approached. "You should go tonight," I said. His axe paused mid-swing. "I don't have to do anything." "No, but Raven was right. If there are coordinated rogue attacks, people need to be warned, need to be protected." I took a breath. "And you clearly care about them, even if you pretend you don't." He turned to face me fully, and I saw frustration warring with something else in his expression. "If I go, you're coming with me, Nathaniel." "Non-negotiable, Emma. These territories aren't safe right now, and I'm not leaving you here alone and unprotected." His gold eyes bored into mine. "Either we both go, or we both stay." The protective edge in his voice should have annoyed me. Daniel had always used my safety as an excuse to exclude me, to keep me small and controlled. But this felt different. Nathaniel wasn't trying to limit me. He was trying to include me, to bring me into his world rather than shut me out of it. "Okay," I agreed. "We'll both go." Something like relief crossed his face before he masked it. "Good. We'll leave at dusk." The afternoon passed in continued work and companionable silence. As the sun began to set, painting the snow-covered clearing in shades of amber and rose, I went inside to clean up. I had nothing to wear except my torn, blood-stained clothes, but Nathaniel had left a clean shirt and pants on the loft bed. His clothes, far too large, but serviceable when rolled and belted. When I climbed down, he studied me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You look like a child playing dress-up." "Well, I didn't exactly pack a bag when I was running for my life," I shot back, but there was no heat in it. His lips quirked. "Fair point." He moved to a trunk in the corner, rummaging for a moment before pulling out a thick woolen cloak in deep forest green. "Here. This will help." The cloak was clearly old but well made, and when he draped it over my shoulders, I caught a scent that made my breath hitch. Female, floral, long-faded, but still present. Someone had owned this once, someone important to him. "Nathaniel?" I asked quietly. "It was my sister's," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "She would have wanted someone to use it." Was. Past tense. The pain in that single word told me everything I needed to know about why Nathaniel lived alone, why he'd chosen isolation over pack life. He'd lost someone, and it had broken something inside him that had never quite healed. I wanted to ask more, to offer comfort, but I recognized the walls going up in his expression. Instead, I simply said, "Thank you. I'll take good care of it." He nodded once, then gestured toward the door. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be." We left the cabin as twilight deepened into true night, our breath fogging in the cold air. Nathaniel moved through the forest with the confidence of someone who knew every tree and stone, and I followed close behind, my wolf alert and curious about what awaited us. The gathering place was exactly as Raven had described, an old barn that had seen better days but still stood sturdy against the elements. Light spilled from the open doors, and I could hear voices inside, laughter and conversation mixing with the sound of a fire crackling. Nathaniel paused at the threshold, and I felt his hesitation like a physical thing. This was hard for him, being among others, opening himself to the possibility of connection and therefore loss. I reached out without thinking and took his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. He looked down at our joined hands, then up at my face, surprise evident in his gold eyes. "Together," I said simply. Something shifted in his expression. Gratitude, perhaps, or recognition. He squeezed my hand back, his grip warm and strong, then led me inside. The barn was warmer than I'd expected, filled with bodies and heated by a large fire pit that had been carefully constructed in the center of the dirt floor. Wolves of all ages mingled together, some in human form, others shifted, their fur catching the firelight in shades of brown, gray, silver, and red. There had to be at least 30 individuals present, maybe more, all chattering and moving with the easy comfort of people who knew each other well. The conversation faltered when Nathaniel and I entered. It wasn't hostile, the attention that suddenly focused on us, but it was intense. I felt my wolf press closer to the surface, uncertain, wanting to shift and hide behind Nathaniel's massive presence. But I forced myself to stand tall, to meet the curious gazes without flinching. I'd spent too long making myself small, invisible, apologizing for existing. Not anymore. "Well, damn," Raven said, appearing from the crowd with a grin that lit up her entire face. "You actually came. Miracles do happen. Don't get used to it," Nathaniel replied, but there was no real bite to his words. Raven's attention shifted to me, her dark eyes assessing but not unkind. "Emma, welcome. Let me introduce you around. This is going to be overwhelming, but everyone here is safe. We don't do pack politics or dominance games. We're just us." What followed was a whirlwind of names and faces. Finn, the kind-eyed wolf from earlier, who managed a smile that made his whole face soften. The copper-haired male was Sebastian, sharp-tongued but with humor lurking beneath his sarcasm. There was an elderly woman named Margot, who'd been turned late in life and had outlived 3 packs, her weathered face holding wisdom that came from decades of survival. A young couple, hardly more than teenagers, who'd run from an arranged mating and found sanctuary here. Hunters, healers, warriors, builders, wolves from every walk of life who'd found their way to this makeshift community. "We're the misfits," Raven explained as she led me toward the fire. "The ones who didn't fit the mold, too independent, too broken, too different. But here, that doesn't matter. We just are." The simplicity of it, the acceptance, made my throat tight. This was what pack should have been, not hierarchy and judgment, but belonging without conditions. "How long have you all been gathering like this?" I asked. 5 years, give or take," Sebastian said, settling onto a log near the fire. "Started with just Raven, Finn, and me. Word spread. Others came. Now we're... whatever this is. Family," Margot said firmly, her voice carrying authority despite her small stature. "That's what we are. Family of choice rather than blood or bite." Nathaniel had moved to the edges of the gathering, not quite joining but not leaving either. I watched him receive nods of acknowledgement from various wolves, saw the respect in their eyes even as they gave him space. He was separate from them, but they valued him nonetheless, protected him in their way, by not demanding more than he could give. "So," Finn said, turning his attention to me with gentle curiosity. "Silverpine Pack. That's Alpha Daniel Thorne's territory, isn't it?" The name hit me like a physical blow, and I must have flinched because Finn immediately looked apologetic. "Sorry, didn't mean to." "It's fine," I said, even though it wasn't. "Yes, that's his territory. Heard he's a piece of work," Sebastian muttered. "All ambition, no heart." "Sebastian," Raven warned. "What? It's true. He challenged his own father for alpha position 2 years ago, barely out of adolescence himself. Won too, though there were rumors about how fair that fight really was." Sebastian's sharp eyes found mine. "I'm guessing you know all about his character firsthand." I could have lied. Could have deflected. But something about this space, these wolves who'd all survived their own traumas and rejections, made me want to be honest. "He was my mate," I said quietly. "He rejected me 4 days ago, in front of the entire pack. Said I was too weak to be his Luna." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the shifted wolves had gone still, their attention focused on me with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. These wolves understood rejection, understood what it meant to be deemed unworthy by those who were supposed to value you. "That's why you were in the eastern woods," Raven said, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You ran." I couldn't stay. Couldn't face them all knowing that I'd been rejected, that I wasn't good enough. The words tumbled out now, released by the acceptance I felt from these strangers, who were somehow more than that. The rogues found me. They would have killed me if Nathaniel hadn't intervened. All eyes shifted to where Nathaniel stood in the shadows, and I saw something pass through the group. A collective recognition of what he'd done, what he'd risked by saving me and taking me in. "Of course he did," Margot said softly, her ancient eyes knowing. "That's who he is, even when he tries to pretend otherwise." "I don't," Nathaniel started, but Finn cut him off. "Yes, you do. You're the strongest wolf any of us has ever encountered, and you use that strength to protect. Always have." Finn's voice carried conviction. "That's why we keep inviting you to these gatherings even though you never come. Because we know that if any of us needed help, truly needed it, you'd be there." Nathaniel's jaw clenched, his discomfort obvious, but he didn't deny it. Raven stood, commanding attention without effort, which brings us to why we're really here tonight. The rogue problem is getting worse. The 3 that attacked Emma weren't isolated. There have been similar attacks across 5 territories in the last month. Someone is organizing them, sending them out in coordinated strikes. "That's not possible," one of the wolves I hadn't met yet said, a stocky male with gray streaking his dark hair. "Rogues can't organize. They're too far gone, too consumed by madness, unless someone is controlling them," Sebastian suggested darkly. "Witch magic, maybe, or something worse." The group erupted into speculation, theories flying fast and overlapping. I listened, trying to follow the complex web of territorial politics and supernatural possibilities they discussed. It was clear that whatever was happening, it was serious enough to have brought even Nathaniel out of his self-imposed isolation. "We need to warn the packs," Finn said. "Even if they don't acknowledge us, they need to know what's coming." "The packs won't listen to us," another wolf argued. "We're outcasts. They'll dismiss anything we say as paranoia or attention-seeking." "Then we protect our own," Raven said firmly. "We patrol in pairs, never alone. We establish safe houses and emergency signals. And we gather information, Someone knows something about who's behind this. I'll handle the northern quadrant, Nathaniel said, his deep voice cutting through the discussion. It's my territory anyway. You'll need help, Raven countered. Even you can't cover that much ground alone. Nathaniel's eyes found mine across the fire, a question in them. I understood what he was asking. Was I willing to stay? To help? To become part of this makeshift defense? Every logical part of me screamed that I should return to Silverpine, beg Daniel for mercy, accept whatever scraps of belonging the pack might offer a rejected mate, but I thought about the past 4 days. About Nathaniel's quiet kindness, his strength that didn't need to dominate to prove itself. About this gathering of misfits who'd offered me more acceptance in one evening than my birth pack had given me in years. About the woman I'd been becoming in that cabin in the woods, stronger, more purposeful, more myself than I'd ever been under Daniel's shadow. I'll help, I said, meeting Nathaniel's gaze steadily. I'll patrol with you. Something blazed in his gold eyes. Approval, maybe, or gratitude. It'll be dangerous. I know. You could get hurt again. I know that too. I smiled, small but genuine. But I'm tired of hiding, tired of being afraid, and I'm definitely tired of letting other people define what I'm capable of. Raven laughed, the sound rich and warm. I like her, Nathaniel. You've got good taste in strays. She's not a stray, Nathaniel said sharply. She's a survivor. The conviction in his voice, the way he said it like it was simple fact rather than opinion, made warmth bloom in my chest. Daniel had looked at me and seen weakness. Nathaniel looked at me and saw strength I was only beginning to recognize in myself. The gathering continued late into the night, planning and organizing, assigning territories and establishing communication systems. I contributed where I could, my knowledge of Silverpine's borders and patrol patterns proving useful. The other wolves accepted my input without question, treating me as an equal rather than a burden to be tolerated. It was close to midnight when we finally left, stepping out into air that had grown sharp with approaching winter. The walk back to the cabin was quiet, both of us lost in our own thoughts, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind that comes from shared understanding, rather than lack of things to say. You meant what you said, Nathaniel observed as we neared the cabin. About helping. I did. Why? I considered the question carefully, wanting to give him truth rather than platitudes, because for the first time in longer than I can remember, I feel like I'm part of something that matters. Like I have a purpose beyond just surviving each day. I looked up at him, this massive, solitary wolf who'd saved me and asked for nothing in return. Because you gave me a second chance at living, and I don't want to waste it. We'd reached the cabin door, but Nathaniel didn't immediately go inside. Instead, he turned to face me fully, his gold eyes searching mine in the moonlight. Emma, I need you to understand something. The life I lead, it's isolated, dangerous. I don't do connections or relationships because everyone I've ever cared about has been taken from me. My parents, my sister, my entire pack. I'm alone because it's safer that way. For everyone. The pain beneath his words was raw and real, and I understood that he was trying to warn me off, trying to protect me from himself, the same way he'd protected me from the cold and the rogues and death. I'm not asking for anything from you, I said softly. Just a chance to figure out who I am now, without someone else's expectations defining me. You've already given me that. Everything else is just whatever it becomes. He studied me for a long moment, and I saw the war playing out behind his eyes. The part of him that wanted connection warring with the part that feared it, that had been broken too many times to trust in anything permanent. You're braver than you know, he said finally. Or stupider, I replied with a small smile. This time he did smile back, real and warm and transformative. Maybe both. We went inside together, and as I climbed to the loft, I felt something shift in the air between us. Not a mate bond. Those were sacred and singular, and mine had been severed. But something else. Recognition. Respect. The beginning of trust, and maybe, though I barely dared to think it, the seed of something that could grow into more. 2 weeks passed in a rhythm of purpose and growing strength. Nathaniel and I fell into a pattern of patrolling the northern territories, moving through the forest like shadows, alert for any sign of rogue activity. We found traces, disturbed ground, strange scents that didn't belong, the occasional glimpse of movement in the distance. But no direct confrontations, nothing concrete enough to explain the coordinated attacks Raven had warned about. During those patrols, I learned things about Nathaniel that he didn't speak aloud. I learned that he moved through the world with a careful awareness that came from years of surviving alone. That he noticed everything, the way birds fled before danger, the patterns in animal tracks, the shifts in wind that signaled changing weather. He taught me without formal instruction, simply by example, and I absorbed it all like someone starving for knowledge. I also learned that beneath his gruff exterior lived a man of unexpected gentleness. He left wildflowers on the table when he thought I wasn't looking, made sure my favorite tea was always steeped and waiting after patrols, adjusted his stride so I could keep pace without struggling. Small things, quiet things, but they spoke of a thoughtfulness that made my heart ache. And I was changing, growing stronger, more confident. My wolf, who'd been timid and uncertain under Daniel's rejection, now moved with purpose. I could run for hours without tiring, track scents I would have missed before, trust my instincts in ways I never had. Nathaniel's faith in my abilities became a mirror in which I could finally see my own worth. The bond between us deepened with each passing day, though neither of us spoke of it directly. It wasn't a mate bond. I knew what that felt like, that golden snap of recognition and belonging. This was different, slower, built on shared silences and small moments of understanding. It was a choice rather than fate's decree, and somehow that made it more precious. On the 15th day, everything changed. We were patrolling the eastern edge of the territory when my wolf caught a scent that made her recoil in instinctive fear. Rogues, yes, but something else underneath, something wrong, like rot and magic twisted together. Nathaniel smelled it too. His entire body went rigid, his gold eyes blazing with recognition and fury. "Get back to the cabin," he ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. "No, we patrol together, remember? Emma, this is different." "That scent—" He cut himself off, jaw clenching. "Please, just this once, listen to me." But before I could respond, they emerged from the trees, not 3 rogues this time, but 7. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural red light, their movements synchronized in a way that confirmed Raven's worst fears. These wolves weren't acting on instinct or madness, they were being controlled. "Run," Nathaniel said quietly, and this time I heard the fear beneath the command. "Run, Emma, now." I should have obeyed, should have shifted and fled while he held them off, but I'd spent my entire life running from fights, hiding from danger, letting others protect me while I remained weak and helpless. I'd been rejected for that weakness, had nearly died because of it. Not anymore. My shift came faster than it ever had before, my blonde wolf emerging with a snarl of defiance. I was small compared to the rogues, delicate compared to Nathaniel's massive black form, but I was done being prey. The battle that followed was chaos and violence. Nathaniel fought like a force of nature, his power overwhelming, taking down rogues with brutal efficiency. But there were too many, and they fought without any sense of self-preservation, throwing themselves at us with mindless determination. I held my own as best I could, using speed and agility where I lacked raw strength, dodging, weaving, looking for openings to strike. My wolf moved with instincts I didn't know I possessed, and for the first time, I understood what Nathaniel had seen in me. Not weakness, but a different kind of strength. Then one of the rogues broke through, heading not for Nathaniel, but for me. Its jaws gaped wide, red eyes fixed on my throat, and I knew with perfect clarity that I couldn't dodge in time. Nathaniel's roar shook the forest. He moved faster than should have been possible, putting himself between me and the rogue, taking the attack meant for me. The rogue's teeth sank into his shoulder, and I smelled blood. His blood, hot and copper in the cold air. Something inside me snapped. I didn't think, didn't plan. I simply moved, launching myself at the rogue attached to Nathaniel with every ounce of fury and fear that I possessed. My teeth found its throat, and I bit down hard, tasting blood and that rotting magical taint. The rogue released Nathaniel with a howl, turning on me, but Nathaniel was already there, finishing what I'd started with one powerful strike. The remaining rogues, sensing the tide turning, scattered into the forest. Nathaniel let them go, his attention fixed on me, his gold eyes blazing with emotions I couldn't name. We shifted back to human form, both of us breathing hard, covered in blood and dirt and snow. Nathaniel's shoulder was torn, blood running down his arm in steady streams, but he ignored his own injury, his hands coming up to cup my face, checking me for damage with frantic intensity. "Are you hurt? Did they get you? Emma, answer me." "I'm fine," I managed, though I was shaking. "But you're not. Your shoulder will heal." His hands were still on my face, his eyes searching mine. "You didn't run. I told you to run and you stayed. I couldn't leave you." The words came out fierce, certain. "I won't leave you. Not ever." Something broke in his expression, all those carefully maintained walls crumbling. "Emma, I know what you're going to say, that it's dangerous, that everyone you care about gets taken from you, that I should go somewhere safe and forget about you." I covered his hands with mine, holding his gaze. "But I don't want safe. I want this. I want you. I want to stand beside you and fight and live and choose my own path, even if that path is terrifying." "You don't understand what you're asking for," he said, but his voice was rough with emotion, his hands trembling against my skin. "Then explain it to me. Tell me what happened. Trust me enough to let me in." For a moment, I thought he would refuse, would pull away and rebuild those walls higher than before. But then he took a shuddering breath, and words began to pour out like a dam breaking. "I had a pack once, a family. We were small, peaceful, living in the mountains far from here. I was young, barely 20 when the hunters came. Not human hunters, shifter hunters, wolves who believed that our kind should be culled, controlled, kept from growing too powerful." His voice was hollow, distant, reliving horrors I couldn't imagine. "They burned our territory, slaughtered everyone they found. My parents died defending the pack house. My sister..." His voice broke. "She was 15. They didn't even give her a chance to surrender." Tears streamed down my face as I listened, understanding finally why he'd chosen isolation, why connection terrified him more than any physical danger. I survived because I was on patrol, too far away to help. By the time I got back, everyone was gone. I tracked the hunters for months, years, found them eventually, made sure they could never hurt anyone again. He met my eyes, and I saw the darkness there, the violence he was capable of. But it didn't bring them back. Nothing could bring them back. "So you decided to live alone," I said softly, "to never risk caring about anyone again." "Yes, it was safer, simpler." His hands tightened on my face, desperate. "But then you appeared, dying in the snow, and I couldn't walk away. And every day since, you've made it harder to remember why I chose this isolation. You make me want things I have no right to want." "Like what?" I whispered. "Like this." He leaned down slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away, to reject what he was offering. But I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't do anything except close the final distance between us. The kiss was gentle at first, hesitant, both of us terrified of breaking something precious. But then it deepened, became urgent and desperate, weeks of tension and unspoken feelings pouring into that single point of contact. His hands moved from my face to my waist, pulling me closer, and I wound my arms around his neck, needing to be as close as possible. When we finally broke apart, both gasping for air, his forehead rested against mine. "I can't promise you safety," he said. "Can't promise you an easy life or a traditional pack structure. All I can promise is that I will fight for you, protect you, stand beside you for as long as you'll have me." "That's all I need," I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. "I don't want easy. I just want real. I want you." We held each other in the snow-covered forest, two broken wolves who'd found unexpected healing in each other, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not a mate bond, but something just as powerful, a choice, freely made, to build something new from the ashes of our separate pains. The sound of approaching footsteps made us pull apart. Raven emerged from the trees, Finn and Sebastian close behind, all of them armed and alert. "We felt the surge of power," Raven said, her eyes taking in our bloodied state and the carnage around us. "What happened?" "Controlled rogues," Nathaniel said, his arm moving to wrap around my waist in a gesture of protection and possession. 7 of them. Coordinated attack. Someone knows we're organizing defenses. "Then we need to move faster," Sebastian said grimly. "Find whoever's behind this before they can launch a full assault." Plans were made quickly, efficiently. The gathered wolves would increase patrols, establish better communication networks, reach out to sympathetic pack members who might provide intelligence. It was dangerous work, but necessary. As the others talked strategy, Nathaniel drew me aside. "Emma, you should know, after what happened today, after what I've told you, you can still walk away, return to Silverpine, find a safer path. I would understand." I looked at this man who'd saved me, taught me, shown me my own strength, and loved me enough to offer me freedom even when it clearly cost him everything. "I'm not going anywhere," I said firmly. "Silverpine was never my home. This, you, these wolves, this purpose, this is where I belong." His smile was brilliant, transformative, chasing away the shadows that usually haunted his eyes. "Then I guess we're in this together," I agreed. The weeks that followed were filled with purpose and growing unity. The gathered wolves became something more than a loose collection of outcasts. We became a true pack, bound not by territory or bloodline, but by choice and mutual respect. Raven led with wisdom and compassion. Finn provided strategic brilliance, Sebastian kept spirits high with his sharp wit, and Nathaniel anchored us all with his quiet strength. And I found my place among them, not as someone to be protected or pitied, but as an equal. My small size and gentle nature, which Daniel had seen as weakness, became assets in reconnaissance and healing. I could move through spaces larger wolves couldn't, could calm frightened civilians, could see connections and patterns others missed. We eventually tracked the source of the controlled rogues to a witch who'd been experimenting with dominance magic, trying to create an army to overthrow the traditional pack structures. The battle to stop her was fierce and costly, but we prevailed, together. 6 months after the night I'd nearly died in the snow, Nathaniel and I stood before the gathered wolves in Miller's barn, and Raven performed a bonding ceremony of our own design. Not a mate bond decreed by fate, but a chosen bond, freely given and freely accepted. A promise to stand together, fight together, build something new together. As Nathaniel slipped a simple wooden ring onto my finger, carved by his own hands from an oak that grew near the cabin, I looked into his gold eyes and saw my future. Not perfect, not safe, but real, and mine, and more precious than anything fate could have granted me. "I choose you," he said, his voice carrying to every wolf present, "today and every day after." "I choose you too," I replied, and meant it with every beat of my heart. The gathered wolves erupted in celebration, and I felt their joy wash over me like a blessing. These misfits, these outcasts, these beautiful broken wolves had become my family, and the man beside me, who'd once been determined to live and die alone, was now mine as I was his. Daniel had rejected me for being too weak. But in that rejection, he'd freed me to discover a different kind of strength. The strength to choose my own path, to love without fate's decree, to build something meaningful from ruins and second chances. As Nathaniel pulled me close and kissed me under the approving gazes of our chosen family, I finally understood what my mother had tried to teach me all those years ago. Kindness wasn't weakness, compassion wasn't defeat, and sometimes the greatest strength of all was simply refusing to give up, even when the world told you that you weren't enough. I was enough. I had always been enough, and I would spend the rest of my life proving it.